Hey Kev, let's follow this trail over here. This looks like there might be something waiting down there.
All right. Hey, wait a minute. Do you hear that?
Yeah, I thought it was just me. What the heck is that?
I don't know what that is. Whoa, do you smell that too?
That's unbelievable. Hey, look.
What the?
Hey, look, those branches are moving over there.
What the heck is that?
Holy cow, is that what I think it is? Look at that thing.
Oh my God.
It's a freaking Sasquatch. Welcome to the Bigfoot Terror in the Woods Sightings and Encounters podcast. I am your host, W.J. Sheehan, author of the series of books Bigfoot Terror in the Woods Sightings and Encounters. 12 volumes available, paperback, ebook, and Audible. All of them at Amazon.com. And the Northeast book is out in paperback and audio format, as well as the Southeast book in paperback and ebook form only at this time. We're working on it, folks. So go out and get a couple of copies, and people seem to be enjoying them. There's a lot of good information in there, and the regional books that I put out, I'm going to end up with 7 of them. 2 of them are out. They'll all be in audio format eventually. I've segmented North America into 7 sections: Canada, Northeast, Southeast, Central U.S., Southwest, Pacific Northwest, and Northwest. You may say, why did I separate them? There were so many accounts in Alaska, Oregon, and Washington that I put Wyoming, Montana, and what's the other one, Kev?
Idaho.
Idaho, thank you very much. Don't know why Idaho slipped me. I love potatoes. And then Canada stands alone, divided into provinces. Kevin, you know, by the way, this is my brother KJ. We do this podcast together, if you're unfamiliar with us. Come on in, Kev.
Yeah, you got to slow down. I'm writing as fast as I can. What comes after Pacific Northwest?
Northwest. But you know, Kev, I have a listener to the podcast, Brenda. Brenda, love you. I know you're listening. She's kind of going over my material again. And the two of us are working on Canada right now. And, man, I kind of... listen, man, I've got hundreds and hundreds of accounts, and I kind of forget some of these, But as Brenda is like doing a re-edit, and I'm rereading her re-edit, I'm digging in, man, and I'm kind of re-upping my interest in Canada. In fact, what we'll be doing today when we get to it, one of these is out of Canada. An incredible account, but there is such activity, Kev, that it can't be ignored.
Well, it's funny you say that, Bill, because what I'm going to cover today in Cryptids in the News and Other Oddities actually comes from British Columbia.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah.
Have you been tuning in the newest season of Expedition Bigfoot?
I have not. I have been traveling like a banshee. So,
Kevin, some of the most incredible stuff.
All right.
And they're on it, man. The last episode that was released this week, you got to get it. You got to watch it.
Where are they this year?
Well, what happened was, now I knew from when they were back in Oregon, they said they were going to plant some surveillance cameras 24/7.
Right.
And I kind of forgot about that, and they really didn't mention it in the other episodes. But the start of this season, they were drawn back to Northern California by a hit on a surveillance camera. This is the area they had been in before. And they caught 2 Sasquatch it's an infrared 24/7 surveillance camera. I guess they have a number of them planted in different places, and they get hits.
Right.
So they can go scrubbing through them and see what's there. Oh, that's a moose, or that's a caribou, or that's, a fat guy with a cigar. A really fat guy with a cigar. And they picked up on these two Sasquatch walking through the trees, man. And I'm telling you, people are going to say what they want. I think it was 100% legit.
All right. And is it clear, like daytime, nighttime?
No, it's infrared,
Okay.
and it was caught at night.
Okay.
So under the infrared camera, everything kind of appears black and white.
Yep.
And you could see them. They're almost identical. You have a brief look at them going between about 3 or 4 trees, and they're really walking fast. I was amazed. Well, hey, look, if you got a 7, 8, 9 foot stride, you walk quick,
Yeah, you cover some ground.
Yeah, and they were, the two of them, like boogieing along like they were on freaking patrol. And then they got another shot of one peeking out from behind a tree.
And this was in Oregon?
This is Northern California.
Oh, okay.
No, originally they set up a camera in Oregon on that hillside. Yeah. And so it turns out they've been setting up cameras wherever they've been. Now, interestingly enough, Maria Mayor and the lead guy, I don't know why I can't remember his name.
Yeah, I think it's Brian or...
You might be Brant or Bryant.
Something like that.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. She and he are teamed up together now. And when they were out in the woods, they had mounted on their chest and their back cameras. So they could see if anything had been coming behind them while they were moving, like watching them.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, and that's where this one picture came from, of a creature peeking out from behind a tree and ducking back in, was from one of the rear cameras.
Very cool.
Yeah, so very interesting. And I encourage people to check that show out, because I really do think, yeah, Kev, like you said, there could be a little dramatization in there, but I think all in all, they're doing a very good job.
Yeah, well, the shows seem to be getting better. Like Skinwalker Ranch this past season was definitely the best ever.
Yep. They're gaining momentum. They're tuning their craft,
Exactly. And my buddy Travis is more excited than ever.
I love that Travis imitation. And by the way, tomorrow's my birthday. 66 big ones. Whoa. And I treated myself to a Fender Strat Michael Landau Custom Edition.
Nice. What color?
You got to look at it. It's kind of a natural wood, almost like a reddish tint, like redwood, with like this satin finish on it. And man, this freaking baby is beautiful.
Nice.
And I'm going to pick it up, Kev, after we're done with this recording.
All right. Well, I need some pictures after you get it. I may even have to hear a few riffs on it, too.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to cradling that and practicing on that, because, it makes a difference. I mean, I've got my old Taylor acoustic that I bought like 25 years ago for $1,500, and that was a lot of money for an acoustic guitar. But you know what? You get what you pay for, honey.
Well, those Taylor guitars are great guitars, though.
No, just beautiful. Just.
But so is a Stratocaster.
Oh yeah, man! This thing just sings, and I'm so happy. I just said, just stop jerking around. Just get what you need, get what you want, and be done with it.
It's awesome.
It's not like I'm going to buy one of these instruments every 6 months.
Yep.
So what do we have, bro, in our Cryptids in the News and Other Oddities segment?
We are going up to the Pacific Northwest to British Columbia, and we're going through an account that was published in what's called the Terrace Standard in 2015.
Ooh, not too long ago.
Not too long ago.
Okay.
And it starts out saying, for those who don't believe in Bigfoot or Sasquatch or aren't sure, one skeptic has changed his mind after 2 recent sightings.
How about
So
that?
this is pretty good. This is a lawman, too, that saw it.
Okay.
Believe it or not, I did see one. I was skeptical before this, but I am not anymore, said Corporal Nathan Dame, stationed at the Lissams/Nass Valley Royal Canadian Mounted Police Detachment, or CMP. And it says, in late October, he was traveling from New Ayanch to Greenville while on duty, and in the middle of a long straight stretch of road, about halfway between the 2 communities, he saw something leap across the entire highway and disappear into the trees.
Incredible.
We've heard that before, too, right?
Yeah, and speaking of the show we're talking about, Expedition Bigfoot, they caught one in the distance in the dark making a leap across the street.
Okay.
So this happens, and it's a flash in the pan,
Yep.
right?
So this police officer says, that's what caught my attention, seeing it leap across the entire highway. It took me a few seconds to process what I saw. You know, pretty interesting stuff. It leapt across the highway, landing on the other side on the shoulder of the road. It then walked slowly into the trees. It did not seem to care about me.
Amazing.
Yeah. And this is up. So this area, Nass Valley, is just south of the southern border of Alaska. You know, where it kind of Alaska wraps down into British Columbia there along the coast.
Yeah, very squatchy area.
Very squatchy, very rural.
And Kev, when we think about how fast something could be on something, or how does this thing capture a caribou?
Right.
You know, think of the agility and the ability of this thing to bound across a road. Now, we don't know, was it 1 lane? I got to think it's 2 lanes,
2 lanes,
maybe
I'm sure. Yeah.
a little shoulder, and it leaps across it. I mean, just think about that. You know, if you're walking next to one of these things in the woods and it wants you, boink, you're dead.
100%, yeah.
You know, just like that. Wow.
Cool.
So what else has he got?
So he says that he went right to that location, you know, where it went into the trees. And he got there within 3 or 4 seconds, stopped and looked into the trees, but didn't see anything. And he says, if it were an animal, I would have been able to see it before it disappeared into the trees. I have no doubt of what I saw. So he says it's approximately 10 feet tall.
Whoa.
With a dark chocolate brown hair,
Okay.
long arms that stretch past its waist, and long legs. And he says,
My God, 10
feet tall.
Feet.
Yeah.
10 feet, man.
They're growing big up there.
Stand in front of a basketball hoop and picture something looking down at you with smiling at
No,
you.
thank you.
Wow.
And he
10
says
feet.
it was not a moose or a bear standing up. I have nothing else to explain what I saw other than Sasquatch.
Yeah.
There are not other animals that come close to that description.
Nothing.
Right.
Absolutely nothing.
Yep.
Wow, man. Can you imagine, Kev,
Yeah.
that experience?
Crazy. So that's his first account. So that's in October. And then in early November, he stopped on the highway approximately 5 kilometers past his first sighting. He heard a noise and looked over into the trees. 20 meters away, I saw something large and brown duck behind a tree.
There you go.
He moved closer to investigate, but could not find what he saw. I don't know what it was, but again, it was not a moose or a bear standing up, and I should have been able to see something as the trees were not very thick in this spot. Mm-hmm. So, pretty wild, right?
Yeah. Now, I heard this Hoopa Indian gentleman get interviewed, and the conversation was around Sasquatch. And the man interviewing him said, well, what should we do if we encounter one of these things? He said, walk away. And then he said that they believe, and I don't know if it's all of them or within the history, that these are interdimensional beings. They come in and out of our reality, which kind of leads me back down the road, I'm always going down. And I've been saying that for years. You cannot just come in and out of this world unless you have ability to be spirit and flesh, because you can't leave prints and then be gone. You can't leave a heat signature, bright red and orange, and then walk behind a straight line like you step behind a cinder block building.
Exactly.
It just doesn't happen. Doesn't happen. So there's something going on here, the likes of which we have no idea. Now, even on Expedition Bigfoot this season, the one fella commented that it seems that these creatures have the ability to stay one step ahead of us all the time. It's almost like they know what we're doing and they just stay just out of reach. I think when people really contact them, it's either a complete accident or they wanted you to see them.
Right.
So that's an opinion, right? Who knows? I can't ask them.
It's fair.
But, yeah, something weird going on here, man. So this is a corporal in the RCMP, 2 sightings. Obviously, I trust this man to know what he's looking at. And he stuck his neck out to make this report not once but twice about 2 different sightings. So, in other words, if you think I'm a lunatic the first time, well, now you're going to know I'm a lunatic because I'm telling you I saw it again. And I believe these things,
Yep.
And it's printed in some type of paper, right?
Yeah. It could be online, this terrorist publication.
Well, I told you my friend Rob up in British Columbia, who's always stomping around hiking looking for the hairy guy. He interviewed a client of his who was retired RCMP, her and her husband. It was a woman. The woman was a native, and I won't get into the whole thing, but it'd take me 15 minutes. But she had told him, we believe, we've seen, we know. So it's another cop coming from a different angle, but, there was no uncertainty in this woman's conversation with Rob about the existence of Sasquatch going back a long, long time. So, interesting, Kev, really interesting. Yeah. Wow. So is that it for that report?
That's it, man.
Well, that's fantastic. So let's go back to Canada. This is a little lengthy, but I like the details, and I cannot believe the situation that this dude found himself in, and you're about to hear about it. All of the testimonials coming out of Canada, be they recent or old, make me wonder just how the United States was able to lay claims to the first sighting and footprint, evidence that got the ball rolling in the world of Bigfoot. But so as not to deny our northern brethren an opportunity to brag, may I present you with the testimony of Tony Saragusa from downtown Detroit. And this is what Tony saw 1965 style. Having been born and bred in the northern portion of our country, we were always aware of the great fishing available to our northern Canada. This is a relatively new thing for most Americans and wasn't well known until some Fishing shows in the 80s showed men landing giant muskies on popping plugs and huge trout being netted in lakes and rivers in our northern neighbor's backyard. True, he's right. But the fishermen in my neck of the woods were always aware and more than willing to take full advantage of the Canadian experience whenever we could find time to make the trip. I don't think I told you this before, but after I came back from the Korean War, having almost lost my ass on more than a few occasions, I made a vow to myself that I was going to enjoy life's pleasures more and work less for the rest of my days. Thank God I was able to stay true to that vow for most of my life. I was a bricklayer, and in my heyday there was no shortage of work. I could put in 8 weeks and take off for 2, and no one cared. Much of my work at the time was cash on the barrelhead, and it was on one of my side jobs, putting a fireplace in a couple's home, that the husband told me of some really good fishing up north in Kenora at a place called Lake of the Woods. It was about 5 weeks after he told me that I was fishing there. This lake was phenomenal. To look at it on a map, I'd describe it as an octopus thrown on a piece of paper. It had more legs and arms attached to it than you can imagine, and the fishing was superb. My first day in, I hired a guide, and whenever I fish up there, this is the best way to begin learning from a pro about what is being fished on the lake and how to fish it. For the following 3 days, I was solo, renting a boat each day, and on day 4, I was working the shore inside of one of the many back bay areas, when I came upon a pile of what appeared to be glacial boulders strewn along an area of shoreline. I kept banging the boat into submerged rocks as I was fishing, and I decided to beach it and fish from the shore. Now, it wasn't like you could just run aground on the shore here. The majority of the lake had trees hanging damn near in the water. So I went along the shore until I found a spot that was a little bit barren and tied the boat to a tree before making my hike back to the rocks where the fish had been biting. I positioned myself next to a huge pile of dark gray boulders on my left-hand side. From there, if I walked forward towards the lake, I could see the bend in the lake's shoreline to my left. And if I took a few paces backwards, I couldn't see the bend anymore. This fact will come into play momentarily. So there I was, standing close to the lake, throwing a spoon, it's a type of lure, into the submerged rocks and nailing one fish after another, which was incredible. As I was fishing, I looked around at the scenery, including the shoreline to my left. Now, this bend to my left had a few openings in the forest close to the lake. In other words, there were patches of trees and no trees. And this went on for hundreds and hundreds of yards that I could see. The openings were very narrow and close to the water, so it wasn't like I was looking at a field or anything like that. They were just narrow strips along the shore that no trees were growing on for whatever reason. But every other square inch of this lake was one tree on top of another one wherever you looked. Okay, so here we go. Hold on to your hats. For whatever reason, as my eyes were fixed on this one strip, I saw a large black figure come out of the trees and walk across one of these strips and back into the trees. Now, mind you, there was not a soul around here, and the nearest boat was so far away that I could barely see it. As I kept watching, this thing or creature continued to walk in the same way, coming in and out of view. I laid my rod down and went over against the boulder pile, positioning myself so that I could see it while not being seen. It was just a moment later that the same thing happened. Not only was this monstrous thing following the shore, but it was coming towards me. I repositioned myself to a place where I could look through some openings in the rock pile that faced in the same direction of this thing's walk. If I had a little more brains at the time, I more than likely would have made the decision to leave, but I didn't. Mistake number one, my friends. I hid my rod before I climbed into a spot on the pile where I could see what this thing was if it kept going in the direction it was heading. I had lost sight of it, so I just sat, watched, and waited. It was only a few minutes before I saw some of the trees wagging back and forth, presumably being moved by this creature. My heart began to race, but there was no turning back now. This monster was about to come right where I sat. I could hear the trees whacking around and some heavy breathing, but I was so tightly wedged into these rocks that there was nowhere else to go. The breathing suddenly got very loud, and out of the corner of my eye, this monstrous hair-covered beast came climbing over the rock pile some 10 feet away from me. It grunted as it walked, stepping up and over some other boulders to my left without missing a beat. Now, let me say this in a way that everyone can understand. I had been on the receiving end of rocket and mortar fire in Korea. We had gone toe-to-toe with the enemy on many occasions. If you died, you died, but at least you got a crack at them. I know what it feels like to crap my drawers from fear, but when... excuse me. I couldn't hit the silence button. But when this thing came stepping over the rocks to my left, I thought I would die. There would be no hope of fighting with this type of creature. I was looking at the son of King Kong. It had to have been over 12 feet tall, almost as tall as the 16-foot boat I was in. Little misprint here, I was in. It had to be 5 or 6 feet wide and was entirely covered in long, shaggy, reddish-brown hair. I curled up in a ball, thinking to myself, please, please don't turn around. Please don't turn around. A short time later, it took 2 steps off the boulder pile, navigating with its enormous feet like it was nothing. This was a naturally formed pile of jagged, gigantic rocks, probably left by glaciers, and this monster went over it like a hop, skip, and a jump. I was alone, but I couldn't have spoken even if there was someone there with me. I was in shock, and I had no idea or way of knowing how big this thing was until it had been right on top of me. There was nothing at the time I could use to gauge its height properly, and truth be told, I didn't know how far away it was or the height of the trees around it when I was watching it initially. I simply saw a dark figure in the distance. My next fear was that this thing was heading in the direction of where I had tied my boat to the tree, and that boat was my only way out of here. Remember, there was no communication back then, especially where I was. I looked at my watch and decided I would make my move in about 45 minutes. I had no weapon except for my fishing knife and pole, which would have done nothing against this beast. I slowly crept over the rocks on my right side and I started to head in the direction of my boat. It was close to 100 yards away through the densest trees that you can imagine, and this monster could very well be there, waiting for me. I was trying to be quiet, but I was covered in sweat from fear, and it took all of my will just to move forward. When I finally reached the spot where my boat should have been, it was gone, and my heart sank within me. The lake was calm as a glass of water. I had tied a ridiculously good knot, and my boat was gone. It seemed to me like whatever this thing was had taken my boat. So I got down on my knees and looked under the overhanging boughs along the lake and saw my boat untied, drifting about 100 feet off the shore. Well, there was only one thing to do, and that was to make a swim for the boat. So I left my pole in the woods, jumped in the water, and headed for the boat. And while I was swimming, I thought that this thing was going to dive in the water and kill me, but that didn't happen. I made it to the boat, pulled myself over the side, collapsing on the seat. Nothing was missing except my food bag. Now I knew that this monster could untie a knot and like to eat sandwiches. I didn't go back for my pole. When I got back to the rental location, I told them I lost my footing and fell in the water, losing my rod. In hindsight, this may have been the stupidest, most boneheaded thing I had ever done in my life. Even though I had survived Korea, this thing could have killed me in a moment. If it had stepped over me, it would have seen me rather than just passing by. Which brings me to something else, Bill. As soon as it was close to me, I could smell it. It stunk like a latrine in the hot sun. And as it was walking away from me, I knew why. All of the fur surrounding its rump was stuck together with what appeared to be a combination of wet and dry feces. His hands and arms were gigantic. The fingers had to hang at least a foot below the wrist, and the width of its upper arms was impressive to say the least. This creature's triceps were as thick as a bowling ball, and it was moving away from me. And as it was moving away from me, I noticed that the bottoms of its feet looked like worn shoe leather. If this thing had seen me and wanted to hurt me, it would have been all over and quickly. Back then, we hadn't heard of Bigfoot, at least I hadn't anyway, and I couldn't believe or identify what I had seen that day. For all I had known at the time, it was some type of lost dinosaur or some creature walking around in Canada. I still kept going back, but not to that specific area, and I have stayed offshore in the boat when fishing. What do you think, Kev?
Wow. What a great description of this 10-foot tall beast.
Yeah, and as the corporal just said, he thought it was what, 12 feet tall or 10?
10, I think.
He said 10
or maybe
also,
12.
right?
Well, no, my account was 10. This one was 12. So another giant from the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, well, Canada or, well, Pacific BC, you know? Well, this guy was up in Kenora Lake, or Kenora. And what the heck did he say the name of the lake was?
Open Lake of the Woods.
Lake of the Woods in Kenora.
Yeah.
So if anybody knows anything about that area, always chime in with us. Go to BigfootTerrorInTheWoods.com.
Yeah, that's up in British Columbia as well, Bill.
It is? Okay. So there you have it. So apparently, you know, as he said, living in the northern U.S., if you were a fisherman, you were more in tune with reports coming from across the border of good fishing, you know?
Yeah.
And muskie, I mean, the fight, those guys were muskie fishing. You know, in that account where the two Bigfoot was seen basically duking it out or slapping it out or wrestling it out, you know?
Yeah, no doubt.
Incredible.
But really great details. Other than the details of the butt of the Bigfoot.
Yeah, well, can you imagine finding yourself, you're watching this thing, like it's got your attention, you're fishing, it's peaceful, and you're like, what the heck is that going in and out of the trees, coming around the lake in the distance, you know? Then you realize it's coming close to you, and you're starting to get a view of this thing, and he ducks into the boulder pile trying to hide. But by then it was too late. Like Tony said, I should have left. You know, how many times do people get in trouble when something tells them inside it's time to go and you ignore it and you stay?
Yeah, no.
That's the problem. That is always the problem. I wish I had have left. Oh, my God. What an incredible account.
That's fantastic, Bill. A lot of detail there.
And that following up the RCMP's dual full account.
And that was almost 60 years ago, right?
Amazing. 65.
Oh,
65, 1965. So, yeah.
Almost 60.
It would be 59 years,
Yep.
right? And by the way, before I get sidetracked, our buddy Dave, love you, brother. I know Dave's listening to this podcast. Oregonian logger. The boys in his logging crew are having ongoing Bigfoot activity on their current work site. It started with the yarder operator up on the hillside seeing something out of the peripheral vision, but he had logs on. He's dragging them up to the top of the hill, and the machine's turning. And he thinks to himself, well, when I drop this load, I'm going to turn back and see it again, and it was gone. Another fellow who came in early in the morning, and we're talking like 2, 3 a.m. in the dark. He had a habit of coming in, and Dave, if I muff this a little bit, it really doesn't matter. He was apparently in his car alone in the dark, back in the woods, waiting for some other people to show up. And he starts hearing trees getting knocked down. And multiple trees getting knocked down. So obviously this gets his attention. What he didn't know was that Dave's son-in-law, who is also on the crew, was coming in his vehicle a short time later and finds a tree across the road. So this guy's in the dark, in the middle of the night, and he's got to get out and try to muscle this chunk of tree out of the way, which he was able to do. I said to Dave, you got to try to get back with your son-in-law and get back to where the tree was across the road. He's got to remember where it is, and the tree's probably laying right there.
right.
I said, I want you to see if you could find a stump, some evidence that this tree was carried there or broke off and was just laying there. Dave went back, and guess what he found? This tree was alive, and it was snapped off about 10 feet from the ground.
Holy moly.
10 feet, a living tree. Dave said it was about 8 inches in diameter, alive, snapped off at 10 feet.
Crazy.
Think about that. 8-inch diameter tree snapped and put across the street with the branches on it and everything. Amazing. So people can say what they want. I trust Dave impeccably. And I have a number of people that are just square shooters, straight up, no bullshit people. And this is what's going on out there, folks. This is what's going on out there. So you could take it or leave it, believe it or not. But not everything is baloney. And Kev, I have to continue with one other thing. You know, I have a lot of friends I've made through the years doing this. One of my friends is a former coroner and post-mortem surgeon, and also used to do preparation of bodies to be seen, you know, at funerals. I'm talking, you know, repairing facial structure and everything that was damaged in vehicular accidents or whatever it may be. I sent him a picture that somebody had shown me of a Bigfoot, reported Bigfoot peering out of some leaves or bushes. Highly detailed. My buddy took a good look at it while we were on a phone call and instantly recognized it as being an acrylic mask. In other words, somebody had painted a human with this acrylic that they use in particularly like in funeral homes and whatnot to make people look a little better, you know, after they die. They have to do work at them, doctor them up. And he also caught a detail in the picture that they hadn't apparently covered up, that it looked like the guy had a hood on. So in other words, some type of mask was done on the face, a hood with hair and everything, covering perhaps the head, coming down the back a little bit. And so somebody who knows can pull the details out. And a lot of people saw this thing and probably thought, wow, it was an incredible makeup job. But to the trained eye, a detail-oriented guy like my buddy, he could pick out a dozen mishaps in what we were looking at, virtually one after another. Like, and this over here, and this
and
over
what
here.
What was it we were looking at, Bill?
I sent you the picture, Kev. Did you get
okay.
it?
Yeah.
That face with like the leaves,
Sasquatch
like it was
face.
Yeah, that was the picture that he dissected.
Okay. Yeah, it looked a little bit like a gorilla to me too, which I guess that could be,
Well, we'll talk off the air a little bit more. There's something I don't want to say on air, but when we finish this podcast, I'll fill you in on the other detail.
The other oddity.
Yeah, I don't want to bother anybody.
No,
I would say
good.
it, but it's best that I just tell you.
But
good. He was 100% convinced, having looked at a lot of dead people, facial structures of different nationalities, bony structures. He knows this stuff inside out, man.
No, that's cool.
I mean, how many people do you know that were a post-mortem surgeon? Like nobody?
Zero.
Yeah, so, I don't know any coroners either, by the way, so,
All right, Bill, great account. We had a triple play, so to speak, from British Columbia, Canada. Awesome stuff. And now we move into listener mail. And our first email comes in from Paul in Washington State. And he just says, hey guys, been going through a lot on my end lately and really want to thank you for helping me get through my challenges by listening to you every week. Love the banter and love the subject as well.
Awesome. And we're glad you reached out. We're glad to be of help. We're glad to have you there.
Happy to be there for you, Paul. Hang in there.
Yeah. Yep.
And our next one comes from Fred. So Fred's having a bit of some technical difficulties, and I saw a couple of these, so I do want to mention it because I have had this challenge myself. And Fred says, I haven't been able to get your episodes to play for the last 3 weeks. Has something changed? I've always listened to you on my Amazon device that starts with an A and has an X in it and ends in an A. I don't want to say her name because she may wake up everywhere. So, Fred, I have had problems with that device myself, not necessarily with our podcast, but with other podcasts. So I can assure you there's nothing wrong with our podcast. I would just try, when you run into problems on that device, just try one of the free podcast players on your favorite mobile device or online on your computer as well. So once in a while, that device, as cool as it can be, gets a little glitchy.
Yeah, good advice, Kev.
Yeah.
And I remember reading that, and I said, well, I'm just going to pass this on to Kev because he can advise. It seems to me that every time somebody writes in with talking about a problem, it's with their player or where they're going and whatnot. Because, folks, our podcasts are out there all over the place.
Yes, no doubt about it.
So try something else. Yeah. It's not like it's there. It's out in the universe. And I assure you, they're all out there.
Yeah, and you can always check on our website, too, BigfootTerrorInTheWoods.com. We have a running list and description of every podcast we've done. So if you're not sure if it's out there or not, you can find it on BigfootTerrorInTheWoods.com.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and our last email, Bill, comes from Kathy from the great state of Maine. And she says, "Hello, boys. I think that I've listened to every episode now, and I don't think I've heard you mention the South African cryptid called Takaloosh or Tokaloosh."
Tokaloosh.
No, I don't recall ever covering Tokaloosh or ever hearing of Tokaloosh. And she said, "If you have covered this, then forgive me. But if you haven't, it's pretty creepy." If and she says that she first heard about it on Josh Gates' Destination Truth TV show. And she says, "I don't remember all of the details, but these creatures are said to be demons that are about 2 feet tall and gnome-like or monkey-ish in appearance. However, they spend most of their time being invisible. They'll sneak in at night and steal your soul or kill a child. The stories vary."
Wow. I have heard the name Tokaloosh.
Okay.
And I think it was on Expedition Unknown a number of years ago.
Could be. Maybe you saw this same show because that's Josh Gates, right?
Yeah, Josh Gates' show, but this was a while back.
Yeah.
I remember the name, the Tokaloosh.
Okay.
Don't ask me what it was about. It was quite a while
I
ago.
wrote it down, Kathy. I'm definitely going to look into it. And Kathy says, "Keep up the good work. I've been homebound for several months now, and I can't tell you how much your podcast has kept me interested and laughing. I feel as if the two of you are good buddies to me now." And we are good buddies to you, Kathy. Hang in there and enjoy that great state of Maine.
Awesome, man. And there's plenty of activity up there. So, watch yourself.
Yeah, and that's it this week, Bill. Happy birthday, as Frosty the Snowman would say.
Yep. It's 66, Kev,
Woohoo!
And, I'm ready to go. No, not that kind of go. No, not that. I am ready. Lord, I'm ready. You take me now, I'm going.
I know you're ready, but we don't want you to go yet.
Yeah. No, I'm ready to go to Guitar Center and pick up my Strat.
Now we're talking. Now we're cooking with gas. And don't forget to send me some pictures later on today.
Yeah. Remind me if you don't get them. I'm doing my lecturing thing today at 4.
Okay.
So I'm going to go to Guitar Center, come home, unwrap that beautiful bird, and, kind of mess around a little bit. And then, later I got to do the suit and tie.
Are you going to carry the Strat on your back while you're up there doing the lecturning thing?
Yeah, I think I'll wear a pair of dark Ray-Bans and put on a bandana or something.
Yeah, there you go.
Carry the Strat across my back. Maybe I'll hitchhike down
there. Oh,
there.
that we're cooking.
With the guitar on my back. Maybe I'll wear some moccasins and a tie-dye shirt.
All right. I think it's time to go.
All right. And remember, folks, if you should find yourself stomping around the woods, British Columbia, Oregon, Maine, where Kathy lives, you best remember one thing, my friends. Always carry more gun than you think you're gonna need. Sleep tight.